Welcome to Interface Studies. My name is Saleh. Today we're going to discuss software when it becomes the user. This is pushed by the rapid development of AI agents and the whole discussion around the future of interfaces. AI models can see and control nowadays. LLMs interpret GUIs as structured trees and choose clicks through MCPs. We've seen many examples of MCPs created by developers because MCP is an open protocol that can control interfaces, build 3D scenes, or even design traditional graphical user interfaces in Figma. This is where a communication happens between the large language model and the application to control it. The concept of automating software isn't new per se. It goes way back. And from the early 2000s, we're starting seeing new types of applications that can do repetitive tasks automatically. We've seen some basic ones like Mac Automator and also advanced ones based on another approach called robotic process automation, mainly applied in enterprise software like Power Automate by Microsoft or UiPath. The problem with these was that any change that can happen to the software can break them. They're a bit clunky. Most of them anyway, like UiPath, have been on a huge AI transformation recently because AI models can understand language better and detect items on screens, controlling our machines on our behalf. By late 2024, as I said, Anthropic open sourcing their MCP became the new approach to build a new kind of AI applications. Google's recent A2A protocol, which is an agent-to-agent protocol with a huge list of partners, made agents a greater reality. Agents are simply things that control other things. Now, A2A protocol can make this even deeper by enabling them to communicate between each other and take actions. In 2025, interface agents became the hottest trend in AI and in software in general. We see all sorts of examples like Cura AI here, where we can see that it's a general agent that can do general tasks like monitoring an email inbox here. And as we can see, it's broken into the prompt, which is originally the request that the user sends, and breaking down the tasks between a planner, an executor, and a critic. This is a massive change because for the first time, we can see a path where any interface can be controlled by an agent that can communicate with a large language model capable of doing many things at once and has enough knowledge to control a variety of software and can be extended through these open protocols. Funding is pouring into these applications now, or interface agents as a category. We see it in Baidu's Xinjiang, for example, which is a travel planner, or Replit Agent, which is part of an IDE and can do things like planning what is required and take all the necessary actions to build. This is all coming from a prompt.
So this is a huge change, and that's why I want to walk you at the beginning of the presentation to big changes we're seeing in mobile, because now we're right in front of the next big transition of human-computer interface.
This is Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm CEO, and now we're seeing the big tech manufacturers talking about this new kind of interface driven by AI. Before we get into anything, I wasn't able to come up with a better reference than Ted Nelson, the creator of the hyperlink. He was a computer pioneer. He had the Project Xanadu, a completely different approach to computing. In his book, Geeks Bearing Gifts, he had this amazing quote when discussing interfaces. Almost everything you see on your computer screen is a construct, something people have imagined to present to you. Constructs are not technologies in themselves. They're not technology. When we see all these buttons and windows and all this clicking that we do every day, even on a mobile screen, these taps, these controls, someone thought of them, and they have been in our life for the last 30 or 40 years, since almost the mid to late 80s. These are all constructs, not technologies. Somebody made them up. And this is extremely important. In my view, when we see the CEO of Qualcomm talking about how AI is the new UI, it's a push coming from a corporate that manufactures chips. Yes, there is technology underneath, no doubt, but the idea generally comes first, and then people figure out mechanisms to make it work. In our case, it came primarily by the recent developments in large language models, protocols related to agents, and so on. So I'm not necessarily focusing on the agent technology itself, but more about how it is sparking a new kind of conversation around interfaces. For more about this GUI paradigm that we live in, I would recommend watching a video that I made about a year ago about the history of the graphical user interface and why I called it a wonderful curse. One interesting point in it is that the GUI, as we understand it today, is not the only way to interact with computers. It is the only way that was successful, to a certain degree. We know today how many problems people who are not technologists face when they're interacting with Microsoft Office, for example. Now, we have to ask, though, what is the value of traditional software interfaces when an AI can operate the software for us? There is a lot of existing software, but why build it again? Why build this interface? We have a huge history of building applications, and maybe AI can control some of them. We'll see how that goes. But what about the future? How is that all going? Well, some people are extremely excited about that. Adam Evans, who is the SVP of product for Salesforce AI platform, sees it as a new go-between with the apps. In his view, this software as a service model, which is a commercial model, will not necessarily become obsolete, because software is still something that they want to sell. But they see this AI interface, this agentic interface, as a new type of front end between the apps, providing the necessary data, logic, and workflow for the automation. Others, which was a little bit surprising, like Jacob Nielsen, who was a user experience pioneer in a recent article, Hello AI Agents, Goodbye UI Design, and RIP Accessibility. In his article, he was promoting this idea of focusing on designing for agents, not humans. Accessibility, according to him, will disappear as a concern for web design. Disabled users will only use an agent that transforms content and features to their specific needs. Maybe. It's an optimistic view. He continues with this evolution of AI agents, how things started from basic autonomy with limited task execution into becoming, soon enough, capable of doing complex workflows and advanced assistance. Some might say we're almost there. Some might say we're actually far from it. This also raises another question around who is software ultimately built for? Because as designers, most of what we have been taught to do was to be user-centric. Now the question is, are we designing software for machines to use with humans just giving these high-level goals? It is a very optimistic view, what we have seen from Jacob Nielsen and others. It is this future where you can just tell the machine what you want and the machine will do it. From enhance, which is kind of real right now, to tea, Earl Grey, hot. Well, there are questions that need to be asked, like agency, control, transparency. What's going on when I send this request and it magically gets implemented and executed and I see the result? Do I need to know? What if something goes wrong? This is not a new topic, by the way, because even the interfaces that we interact with today raise these questions, and academics have been looking into them for a very long time. And in my view, we are at this stage of figuring things out again. Because whether we can see this interface through a button or a window or not, it is still an interface. It's not necessarily graphical. It's not necessarily visual. In her amazing book, Power Button, Rachel Plotnick even discusses the history of buttons, but specifically when it becomes about the buttons that we use in our interactions with technology, these buttons fade into the background of human-machine interaction, and they kind of become more visible when they malfunction. But the buttons are hiding a lot of complexity behind them, whether it is code or advanced electronics. There's so much happening behind a button. When we press, we do not see, do not know what's happening. Sometimes we care, sometimes we don't. And now agents are taking that into a whole new level. We can see that in certain applications, like both these examples are from Crea AI design apps, where we can see that it is becoming more about moving things from a state to state. The interface is still there, but it's kind of new. You have an image, you move it into another space, it becomes 3D, or on the right, these things were doable using things like Photoshop, but they required a lot of work, a lot of craft, a lot of understanding. But now I can just tell the machine in a different way by dragging things around. I want this here, I want that there, and that interface, in this case, GPT Paint by Crea, is doing it for us. Both different kinds of interfaces within the same platform, relying on some form of an agent doing multiple things at once on our behalf based on an intent. Recently, even LoveArt is combining and consolidating everything that a designer can do together in one place, from branding to fashion design to conceptual work. And what you need to do is just give a prompt, and multiple models, multiple types of agents are doing things for the user, or in this case, can be a designer or doesn't have to be a designer anyway. Like branding, a process that can take weeks, if not months, is now taking, say, an hour. From logos to color schemes to typography and all of that, kind of also introducing a new interface for it, because as we can see, it is trying to explain what's going on. To what degree it is accurate, we're going to talk about that later, but we can see it and we can see results in front of us. So this is no longer something that we can just imagine. It is there. How much we trust it is a question. How much we think of it as good enough, let's go, is a question. The matter of taste when it comes to design and designing things in general is in question. But taste, is it only for designers? Is it only for people who graduated art school? These are all questions that the existence of such ability, such function, is making us ask more and more. This is basically being applied on new tools that are coming out almost every day nowadays. Make no mistake, it comes with a lot of challenges and issues. They're all exciting. They're all full of hope, I would say. Moving things from a state to state and all these things, it is quite exciting. But someone made them up. These are all constructs based on previous constructs to a certain degree and flavored with this new agentic ability, if we want to say. Manos took the world by a storm by being able to do so many things at once and explaining it to us as well, if we're willing to see a huge amount of back and forth or chat. It is all there. Do we look at it all the time? Do we ignore it? Are we just interested in the results? These are questions that are emerging from the kind of over-reliance on a chat interface in existing tools, even like ChatGPT. We can see how we end up with hundreds of chats on the side. Do we go back to them regularly? How do we access them? How do we verify them regularly? These are all questions that need to be asked. But the essence of it all is that if it's an interface that we cannot see at all, it's an agent that is doing things in the background and just giving us results, or it's a little bit of a traditional interface with this right side chat, or what they call a co-pilot sometimes, that can either give us answers, which was the basic form of LLMs into now taking action. So where these things work, we will get unprecedented productivity and automation. We also will end up hopefully solving this swivel chair syndrome where we have to do repetitive tasks again and again and again, and agents can take care of that on our behalf. The consistency between different agents is important because they're now all capable to a certain degree of reading machine code and just doing things without us giving any direction other than the original one. And there is an argument for accessibility. I won't be surprised if we started to see some examples. We remember ChatGPT when they had this video of a blind man asking ChatGPT app to explain things for him. Now, there's also a question of what if they do not work? The level of lost audit trails I am seeing every day as someone who works in development. I can see huge amounts of chats that I'm opening and closing, not necessarily interested all the time in the response. I just want to see the actions, their immediate results. So basically, I'm just taking what I'm given. There are some regulatory and transparency issues. We see them in the EU AI Act, and we will see a lot of countries around the world, whether publicly or not publicly, enforcing their own regulations around AI, specifically when it comes to when AI agents are used for something a bit sensitive, like healthcare. These risks grow with autonomy because once we have fully empowered agents to transfer funds, for example, or as I said earlier, looking into healthcare data, adjusting them, we just know what the agent is telling us. So there is this need for human either in the loop or on the loop to monitor these high stake actions and look into ways to interrupt them, stop them, bake that ability within the system. And probably the most important one to me is this issue of skill erosion and the cultural pushback. We're already seeing some movement against AI. Skill erosion, whether you're part of the movement or not, is going to become an issue because a lot of developers are starting to report that they lost some of their ability to code properly. When automation does something for you, especially if it was repetitive, you will lose that skill of setting things up after getting used to them. And this is the automation paradox that is going to be with us for the rest of humanity because of our over-reliance on technology. Technology in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's how things get pushed and implemented. What is the motive behind implementing certain technologies in certain circumstances? But recently, Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, wrote this lengthy piece that kind of took the press by storm, The Urgency of Interpretability. And it was mostly about how we do not necessarily understand how generative AI itself is generating results. And this is an issue that is going to be quite important. They work, but we cannot pinpoint exactly how they work. When a generative AI system does something like summarizing a financial document, we have no idea at a specific or precise level why it makes the choices it does, why certain words over others. This is a big issue. Now, he talks about what is coming and when he expects things to happen, and it's in about 10 years, given the amount of research that is currently going into them. So we are in a bit of a conundrum now, where we have something that works, and we are seeing how fast things are changing by building things like MCPs or agents that talk to each other and implement amazing stuff. As things get more and more complicated, at a fundamental level, we still do not understand why certain choices were made. And if we go back a couple of minutes ago when I was discussing what needs to happen for these agents to be working well in a level that we can trust, we know that this is not possible now, but the acceleration is not stopping. This is an example of me just quickly summarizing an article from The Verge through ChatGPT o3 with good amount of reasoning, and we can see how the same prompt is going to generate two different results. They're acceptable, but they're different. And even the approach into the analysis that we can see some of here, so we can think of this as an interface that is showing us what the model is thinking, is not necessarily the same the whole time. On the right, we see the Python code that is being implemented to do the memorization, while on the left, we don't see any code, we just see it working until eventually both generate a result and we can see the output. But the output is not similar. As we can see here, first we see writer, S.E. Smith. Here it says journalist, S.E. Smith, exploring digital decay, reflects on the digital decay about disappearing links and all that. So it's a completely different text. They're both summaries, 100-word summaries, but they're different. And I have no idea exactly how this choice of words and why. This is showing us that on a fundamental level, we do not know how things are working, but at the same time, we're witnessing what the meaning of application, how is it changing? And applications are not necessarily the only thing about computing. We've got used to them, and now everything is an app in our view, but that's not how computers should work. Is that going to change? We're going to end up with a huge mashup of services without necessarily an application, and we have a central service that we can send requests to and basically get an output or a result or an implementation, whatever it is, and end up with what we want. The interface here is still lost in the middle, and there's no clear way of knowing how things are moving or standardizing that beyond the deeply technical stuff like the MCP. But on an interface level, we're still seeing regular interfaces, as we saw earlier, and with some AI elements added on top. Some work well, like how we saw with Crea AI, for example. Some are aging badly, like Microsoft Office or even Google Drive and Google Docs, where the agent feels to be inserted into the existing application with all its features. This is a shift, no doubt. These APIs and data schemes becoming the interface is a big issue that kind of changes how designers work as well. These open standards dissolve this line between front end and back end, and we're exposing more technical information between different agents. Designers themselves need to be able to understand that to continue working, at least as we understand things now. There is also dual audience software, we can think of it that way, where whatever we're building, we have to keep in mind that an agent might come and use or rely on. So the structure of what we're doing, on a fundamental level or even on an UI level, needs to be what we can call AI friendly. We have to treat agents as maybe first-class users who need clear semantics, permissions, and feedback loops, just as humans do, because that's how they have been trained. And there is also a hybrid human AI workflow coming, where they're understanding when humans need to intercept a certain workflow. How will they be able even to adjust certain things if they wanted to? And what will that mean to the existing workflow is also another thing for experienced designers to think of. It's no longer about wireframes necessarily. It's going a bit beyond that, more on a systems level thinking or an abstract way of thinking about how things will work and how we'll come up with ways to understand what we need to do if X goes wrong or Y goes wrong, and the interface there is just technical information and words. And maybe GUIs will be eventually some form of a dashboard, maybe not, but you don't have to click on everything. You'll be able just to see some sort of an alert and take action on it. Keep in mind that I'm exposing both issues at the same time. The rapid acceleration of building new startups, new companies, even big tech pushing towards a certain direction, and the complexities piling up from this fundamental issue of not knowing exactly how an LLM model or a generative AI in general functions, and where do things meet eventually with these two problems happening, both of them at the same time. We have rapid acceleration and rapid increase of potential problems that may arise from not knowing this basic thing, to the fact that people don't think about all of that. People just want their problems to be solved. This is a big topic that we will need to discuss even more. There is a worldwide kind of cross-disciplinary push already underway of all these things with funding, with companies from the US, from China, from all over the world adopting agents to a certain degree with no questions asked. And also we have, I think, entered a new, because looking at Product Hunt or looking at new apps and services, there's an AI native software era that we're living in right now, where pretty much every application has some form of an AI feature. Whether we need it or not, that's a different question. Some of them will get it well, some of them won't, but they're there and it's growing. This is why, in terms of talent as UX designers or as designers, or recently became kind of all these roles, there are economic reasons for all of this, but all of this consolidated into a product designer role. It's shifting again. It's no longer about building pixel perfect screens and windows. There is a new approach to perhaps AI behavior designer or prompt architect, if that's a phrase, and prompt engineer we've heard of before. How accurate these all prompt libraries are, it's more of a trial and error, but they're there and some people rely on them regularly nowadays. So this is becoming more of a need for the market than an actual profession. And that's how in this industry things seem to be happening, where a market needs a certain type of skill, it becomes a job, it becomes a role, and it becomes a life. So it's not necessarily new, but there's another shift that is happening for sure. Our notion of a user interface will expand to include AI agents as first-class users, especially as we're building for agents more and more. And this comes with exciting possibilities for efficiency and probably inclusivity, alongside these cautions about losing these direct human touch points, de-skilling, the problems that can happen due to potentially hallucinations, and the fact that we still do not understand how these models work on a fundamental level. The value of traditional interfaces will not necessarily vanish, but it will definitely be reimagined. Thank you so much for watching, and looking forward for your comments.